If you can.
I just want to look at your eyes. Okay, go ahead.
Carrie Coon, welcome. This has been a pretty big breakthrough year for you.
Yes, it has.
Your biggest roles to date, on TV in The Leftovers and in film in Gone Girl, and they came out just like a few months of each other over the past summer and fall. How did those opportunities come about, and I guess sort of in what order did you end up shooting them?
Sure. I had finished, we had the Tony Awards in June of that year. So obviously my play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, had done very well at the Tony Awards, and I was in New York, so all these things came my way where they wouldn't have if I was still in Chicago. So I guess I booked the pilot of Leftovers, and we shot it in July. And then I booked Gone Girl off of a self-tape in my living room in August. So we shot the pilot, and then I shot Gone Girl. And then they overlapped about a week, and I started shooting Leftovers after I wrapped. So, yeah, it was kind of crazy. I worked all year. The only thing an actor wants to do.
What was that week of overlap like, going back and forth between these two very different characters?
It was supposed to be, it would have been a lot easier if I didn't have to fly across the country. But in some ways, I think to play Nora, it's okay to be worn out. I think she's a little worn out. So, and Fincher is so exacting that you're going to show up no matter what. So it was fine. It was fine. Very different, but cool.
Now, as you mentioned, your character on The Leftovers, it's a very, she is a pretty worn out character, a very tragic character, and it's a pretty dark show, and she's one of the most tragic characters on it. She lost her, entire family when, the event happened, 2% of the population of the world disappeared. How do you prepare for that role, or is there any way to really prepare for that level of loss?
That's a great question. It's something you never want to take lightly. You want to do it justice, because certainly there are people who have suffered tremendous loss in a way that I haven't. I also don't have children, and from the people I know who have children, even just the mere thought of any kind of anything happening to their child evokes this kind of, they almost have to block it. They can't even go there because it's so incredibly painful and unbelievable. So in some ways it might have been better that I don't have children, because I could actually allow myself to go to a space where somebody who actually has kids probably can't even go because it's too painful. Not that, I mean, certainly a lot of actors are asked to do that, and they do. But boy, I read the book Wave about the woman who lost her family in the tsunami, which is the closest equivalent loss I could come up with for Nora's. That sort of sudden disappearance is what that woman experienced, and that helped me, I hope, bring some dignity to it. I hope.
I've had a chance to talk to Justin Theroux and Ann Dowd about working on the show, and they both talked about the process of shooting and how the actors don't necessarily know what's coming up next in the story, which is unique. Some shows, you generally know the general outline in advance. Was that the experience for you, that you were sort of in the dark, from episode?
Absolutely. I mean, we had the novel, and we knew that Tom Perrotta was involved, but boy, from week to week, we didn't know what was going to happen. So, for example, that episode Guest, episode 6, I had no idea that was coming. I had no idea that was coming down the pike. So it was really shocking to me, because it was obviously not part of the material in the novel, and it was all about Nora, which I wasn't anticipating. Because when you work on an ensemble show, sometimes you're only working 1 or 2 days a week because there are so many characters. So that was my first time ever working that many days in a row, and it was really intense.
Yeah, you mentioned that episode Guest. You're pretty much the star of your own mini movie for that
yeah,
episode.
It's like a movie.
What was that? What was it like when you got that script, and what was your reaction, and how did you prepare for that particular episode?
Oh my gosh, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. In the best way, because of course, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but as an actor, one of the things that I love is being challenged to do something I haven't done before. And coming from the theater, I also haven't done a lot of television. I've done some guest star spots, but that was and I'd been through Fincher school at that point, so I had logged a lot of hours in front of the camera with him. But TV moves so quick, and if you don't get something in 3 takes, it doesn't matter, we're moving on anyway. So I knew that there was a lot of pressure on me to land all those beats, and luckily Carl Franklin's a great director. And the other thing that I think is fortunate is that I got really sick, and sometimes that's the best circumstance in which to engage in that kind of a storyline, because you can't get in your own way. I was so exhausted and so delirious, and in some ways, for example, that scene, that orgy scene, is kind of dreamlike anyway. So it worked in my favor being absolutely delirious.
Yeah, you mentioned, the quick pace of TV, 3 takes and you're moving on. Were there any experiences on the show where you're like, oh, if only I had that fourth take?
I have to say, I think we were in really good hands. The directors we work with are really thoughtful, conscientious directors. Mimi Leader was kind of leading the show in the last half of the season. And I have to give a lot of credit to the crew because they're so respectful of our process and they were so willing everything to go well. The cameramen are so respectful, and some of those scenes they're really in your face. And if you don't have people, those amazing people working behind that equipment, it can be really stressful. And I have to say, because the show was so well written, I feel like we often knew what was expected of us. And there were very few times I walked away from the set thinking I hadn't done whatever was expected, I guess. I hope that doesn't sound arrogant. It's not meant to be arrogant. It's just, it was exhausting. And when you've emotionally exhausted yourself, there's not really much else you can do.
The other interesting thing about that episode is that not only is it focused entirely on her, it's her in a completely different context from what we have seen her in on the show and what we saw her in following that. She's in New York. She's around a different group of characters and sort of in a completely unfamiliar setting for you as an actress, as well as the character. What was that part of it like?
That was thrilling because it's so appropriate for that particular storyline because Nora is in her town. She's obviously a kind of celebrity. So to pull her out of that town pulls her away from herself in a way she hadn't been taken out of herself in a long time. So her identity is compromised. In that respect, it was the perfect circumstance for shooting the show, to be surrounded by a lot of extras, in this bustling Manhattan street. And it kind of mirrored Nora's journey in a way that was very helpful as an actor. So I was grateful that they set that thing outside of the town.
With Nora's level of depression and her extreme coping methods, like at one point we see her, getting shot while wearing a bulletproof vest. That's her way of sort of, dealing with these intense feelings. Were you ever worried about her fate on the show, since you didn't know what was coming next necessarily? That maybe you might find one episode that oh well, she's gone now.
It's not Game of Thrones. But the way that TV has to sort of provide a kind of shock value, because I think we've been so saturated by extremes and violence and all kinds of things in our media, TV has a responsibility to deliver these sort of huge moments, I think, or people don't necessarily stick with it. So you didn't ever know what was going to happen. And I knew that we were going to hew pretty closely to the novel, so I had my suspicions about the way the series would end, but I had no idea what was going to happen from week to week. For all I knew, they were going to send Nora to Miami Beach and then, take the show there. Who knows?
Well, I mean, you never know that, season 2 coming up, when we left Nora, we didn't know exactly where she was going or what she was going to do when she get there, so maybe your next entire season will just be mimosas on the beach.
That's right, because, none of us know what's going to happen, myself included. So if you hear anything or you read any articles, let me know.
If I read any reports, that you've been spotted on, like, a beach or in a resort, I'll be like,
all right,
it's going to be fine.
You'll know exactly where we're headed, yes.
Your role in Gone Girl, moving from Leftovers is such a 180-degree different turn from that character, because in Gone Girl you're sort of the voice of reason, to Ben Affleck, who plays your brother. Have you been familiar with that novel before you took that role? Because that's another.
Oh yeah. Gillian Flynn is a Chicago-based writer, and my husband and I are actors in Chicago. So we were actually doing Virginia Woolf in New York a few months after the book came out, and my husband picked it up and started reading it. And what he discovered is that there are all these really sly references to the play in Gillian's book. And as it turns out, she had seen our production in Chicago while she was writing it. So it kind of makes sense those things dovetail, two troubled marriages, that they kind of align really beautifully. So when I was cast in the film, Lorraine and all these, and David came and said, oh, we found this great, unknown actor to play Go. And Gillian Flynn was the only person who knew who I was, because she'd seen me on stage. So that was really neat.
The sibling relationship between you and Ben Affleck is kind of complex, because she's supportive of him, but at the same time, she's not blind. She can sort of see and understand some of the troubling aspects of his behavior. What was it like playing that balance of the supportive sister, but also, suspicion with him?
Well, my friend, I have 3 brothers. So I've had a lot of practice. Not that they've gotten in a lot of trouble in their lives, but enough that that I've been able to sort of practice this role a little bit. So the great thing was that Ben Affleck is a very funny, quick, warm, accessible guy. So we were able to build a relationship really quickly. We have very similar senses of humor, and his rhythm is kind of similar to mine, or mine is similar to his, I guess you could say. So we fell into that banter really quickly. And I think when you're building a familiar relationship, especially one that's familial in that way, that rhythm is really important. And since we were able to find that, the rest of it kind of fell into place. But certainly we always want to believe the people we love. How often have we seen cases play out on television where there are family members standing by someone even when the public is turning against them? So we never want to believe that our loved ones are capable of terrible things, even though we all are capable of terrible things. It's part of being a human being.
Yeah, it's something. It's it's sort of a very familiar idea where you hear about a terrible crime and friends and family are like, oh, that's not the person I know. The person I love couldn't have done that sort of thing.
Yeah, we don't believe that they're capable of those things. But being an actor is great because as an actor, one of the things we're asked to do is to confront that question all the time, which is, what am I capable of? And the answer has to be anything, or else I don't think you could do this job. So it's fun.
You mentioned working with David Fincher and being in front of the camera a lot with him. He has a reputation as a perfectionist. What was it like working with him on this was your feature film debut, wasn't it?
It was, yes. I'd never made a movie before, so that was really terrifying. I am also a perfectionist, so two perfectionists working together, it might sound like the perfect storm, but it was actually really great because what happens on a David Fincher set is that the bar is set so high and that everybody who's been invited to that place is someone who's interested in reaching or exceeding that thing. I think that's what's so great about David's casting is that he finds actors who listen and then he puts them in a room together. And if you're really listening, I think you're always trying to be the best you can be in any given scene. So it's this kind of incredible confluence of events where all these people come together and are trying to build something really great. And the other thing about David is he doesn't waste your time. If you're on set, you're probably working. So there's this kind of great rhythm that gets set up in your body where you know when you show up, you have to do the thing, and you have to do it as well as you can. You'll also have all day to do it in many takes, which I found very reassuring since it was my first movie. I needed that time in front of the camera to get comfortable, and you never walk away from a day thinking, oh, I should have tried it this way, because you probably tried it, because you did it so many times.
That in particular must have been a huge change going from the David Fincher set to the Leftovers set.
Oh, gosh. Yes, I remember the first scene I worked on, one of the first major scenes, and I remember getting to the third take, and somebody saying, okay, we got it, moving on, and thinking, no, we were just warming up. This can't possibly be finished, but of course it was, and we moved on anyway. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch sometimes because you think, oh, if only we had 5 more minutes. But that's just the way the beast works. It's time is money, so you got to get it done.
How long did it take you, I guess, when you went to the Leftovers from that shooting multiple takes for David Fincher to sort of get into the rhythm of okay, this is how many takes I get, this is how fast we're moving, and to not worry so much about it?
My dear, it happened on the first take because that first day moved so fast that you're like, okay, I have to adjust right now or else this thing gets away from me. So I think you have to adjust immediately or you're going to be in big trouble. So hopefully it worked out.
Well, we're entering award season now, and you're one of the few actors who can say that she's getting attention for both a role in TV and in film. So your next several months could be busy, talking about Golden Globes and Oscars, and then in a few months after that, Emmys potentially. What are your thoughts on the awards buzz surrounding both of these projects?
I mean, it's incredibly flattering to be part of those conversations. There's some remarkable actors that get considered for those things, and to be in that company is incredibly humbling. Unfortunately, we also just have to keep trying to get jobs and keep working. So I'm just kind of doing what I always do. I'm in Chicago. I'm making tapes. I'm putting myself out there for work. So in some ways, the only thing that's changed is the internet. My life hasn't actually changed very much. And if it does, great. I try to enjoy things that come my way and appreciate them while they're here. And if some of that stuff happens for me, that would be really fun and great. And I promise to appreciate it and have a great time. And if it doesn't, I promise to keep doing my work. And, you know, and good luck to everybody. So, but thanks for, you know, thanks for bringing it up and being supportive by, you know, throwing me on Gold Derby. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, and you've had practice though, on you know, because you were nominated for a Tony for Who's
Oh
Afraid of
yeah.
Virginia Woolf, and you know, what was that whole experience like?
Oh
Wasn't
my
that your
God.
Broadway debut also?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most incredible thing that happened to me because I've been a theater actor most of my adult life. I started acting in about 2006 when I got out of my master's program, and I've been working as an actor ever since. So that was the most incredible, flattering event I'd ever been through, and to have my husband win for that play, which I think he was incredible in, to have our director win, Pam McKinnon, who's a remarkable director, and to win Best Revival, and just to be nominated, which I was not anticipating at all, was it was amazing. Also, like 12 of my family members were at the ceremony, and my parents were sitting behind Nathan Lane, and we just had the best time. I think my parents were out till 6 a.m. that night. I went to bed. I went to bed at like 2.
You played Honey in the play, and that's sort of a famous role. It won an Oscar for Sandy Dennis in the film, and it earned previous Tony nominations for Melinda Dillon and Mireille Enos, who actually made her own big move to TV after that. Uh,
Right.
what was it like following in those footsteps of filling in that famous role like that?
Oh my gosh, if you think about it too much, you just won't get out of bed. So what I love is that at Steppenwolf in Chicago, when they approach a play that's already established, the way this one has been, the philosophy is always you have to approach it like it's a new play. You can't think about it like a play that's been done for decades and decades. And so we certainly hewed ourselves to that strategy. And Pam is a really smart, insightful director and very trusting. And she makes us feel trusted in a room. And so I felt actually really free to play around in that world. And I didn't watch the movie, and I didn't go back and try to listen or engage with any of those performances because it would have just gotten in my way. So luckily I was with these incredible actors who just get up there and listen every single night, and the thing really felt new almost every time we did it, which I wasn't expecting because we did that play, you know, it was almost 2 years we had that play in our bodies, and it's really hard to make that fresh. So gosh, I was lucky to be with those people. They were incredible.
You mentioned being a theater actor for most of your career, and then making these huge leaps into film and TV. All of a sudden, you talked about the adjustment from a David Fincher set to a TV set, the Leftovers set. But what is it like just going from the stage to the screen in that way as an actor?
Oh, I think you do have to learn how to scale things back. But I think the nice thing about theater, when you're telling a story from beginning to end, it gives you this sort of great gauge, this great internal gauge about storytelling. So I think it's actually a great barometer for when you're moving behind the screen and you have to sort of calibrate yourself, and there's not a lot of time. Maybe you don't get rehearsal, and you maybe don't get a lot of takes to do something. So I feel like the prep work is really important that you get in the theater. It sort of teaches you how to work, and then you sort of have to shrink that process and make it faster. And also, I loved being in Chicago because I actually got a lot of opportunities to audition for commercials. So when I was kind of in the thick of theater, I got to sort of start just going in all the time for these commercials and some pilot auditions and every now and then a guest star spot. And because of the size of this community, I was able to get a lot of time to practice that stuff when I was a young actor. So I felt like when these opportunities did come, I was pretty ready. I was pretty ready to jump in there into the big leagues, I guess. They were pretty big leagues, but yeah, I think Chicago gave me that chance, and I'm grateful for that.
You mentioned that the one big thing that's changed for you is in terms of your career is the internet, and just in my unscientific observations just on message boards and social media, among the fans of The Leftovers and Gone Girl, you in particular and your characters in particular seem to be particular fan favorites. Have you experienced a lot of that fan response personally, or have you tried to avoid all things online?
My husband's great. He'll always Google things or Twitter search and tell me nice things people say. Every now and then he'll also tell me something mean that people say just because it's funny. And He likes to read those mean tweets out loud. It's something we do, sort of like Jimmy Kimmel, and it's entertaining and reminds us, you have to keep everything in perspective. The funny thing is, everybody kept saying to me, "Oh, you're going to start getting recognized. Your movie's so big, and you're on TV now." And I have to say that even when I would come out of the stage door at Steppenwolf, or when we were on Broadway, people didn't know I was in the play. So I haven't experienced any of that sort of fan adoration, if it's out there, unless I'm at an event and I'm all dressed up, because normally I walk around with my chapstick and my T-shirt, and it just hasn't felt real to me. Also, as soon as Gone Girl came out, I had an opening in my hometown, and then I went to Africa to be with Tracy while he was shooting Homeland. So I was kind of on another continent when all this stuff was happening. So I felt sort of weirdly removed from all of it. But I'll take your word for it that it's happening.
Well, best of luck that continues, and I want to thank you again for talking to me today, and best of luck on the awards season to come. You might be busy in the next few months.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you for that, and thanks for the support. I really appreciate it.